as we began discussing yesterday, Balarāma is a transcendental personality. Maya tite vyapi vaikuntaloke, punaishvari shi chatravyu hamadye, rupam yasyo bhati sankarshanapyam, tam shri nityananda ramam prapadye. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the author, Kaviraj Goswami, is explaining the hierarchy of the universe and of the spiritual world. Of course, we get many hierarchies, like in the Brahma Samhita, Goloka Namni Nijadamni Chale Tatasya Devi Mahesha Haridhama Suteshu Teshu Te Te Prabhava Nichaya Vihitasya Yena Govindamadi Purusham Dhammam. There's a description of the various regions, the general regions of the creation and the non-creation. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Parastasmat tubhavonyo vyakto vyaktat sanatana yaksak sarveshu bhuteshu nashyatsu navinashati. This material creation is created and destroyed all the time. In fact, there are various levels of destruction. There are partial destructions, during which time those who live in the semi-higher planets have to get an airline ticket and fly higher to get away from the floods. That's a constant, it happens cyclically. And then there are the destructions that take place at the end of Brahma's life, when everything in the universe, after his 311th trillionth birthday, Vanchakalpa Tarubhascha, and then the whole thing is wound back up again into the body of Mahavishnu. And then, as is described in the Laghu Bhagavatamrita, there are continuous destruction. In case you haven't noticed it in your own life, the process of continuous destruction. Anyone? Anyone? Yes? Constant? Yeah. So, beyond this world, vyakto vyaktat, beyond the manifest unmanifest, there's a world, nashyatsu navinashati. It's not destroyed when everything else in this world is destroyed. It's eternal. And it's not created either. It's eternal. Anything that's created will be destroyed. So the spiritual world's not created, nor is the soul created, nor is Krishna created. He's the source of all living beings. They're co-eternal with Krishna. And the material world's also eternal, but it's sometimes manifested and sometimes unmanifested. Therefore, it's described as inferior energy. And beyond this inferior energy, Maya tite, beyond Maya, the world of illusion, Maya tite vyapi vaikunta loke. There's a Vaikuntha realm, which is the realm of Vaikuntha. There's no anxiety. In this world, there's always anxiety. The little birds looking around, at least the birds in my yard, they come to take a bath in our fountain. And when I come out of my door, they freak out and fly away. And I say, I like birds. You can hang around. And they say, we don't trust you anyway. Or anybody else for that matter, because we're small and everyone eats us. And we've done this many lifetimes in a row. So we're not going for it. And this is the nature of the material world, kuntha. But in the spiritual world, there's no destruction, there's no death, there's no anxiety, and there's no business trips, because everyone there is on permanent holiday. Okay? Say yes. Yeah. So nobody takes trips with cargo and briefcases, and you see people sitting calculating the whole time, getting their PowerPoint just right. They don't do that. They have games, flower games and cultural games, all kinds of arts and crafts and songs, lots of music. It's all an eternal festival going on in Vaikuntha and also in Goloka Vrindavan. It's just more casual there. In Goloka Vrindavan, they paint themselves, do the cowherd boys every day in Krishna, with the pigments from the earth. You can get rocks that have pigments in them. You rub them together and get a little powder and mix it with water, and then you can paint yourself. And you can also find all kinds of leaves and peacock feathers lying around in Vrindavan, and that's what they do. They pick them up and decorate themselves. Mayatite vyapi vaikunta loke purnarishvarya shichaturvyu hamadye. So Sri Balarāma is the first expansion of Krishna. So why does he expand anyway, and what are we talking about? Eko bahu shyam. The one, and there is only one, when we speak of the ontology of Krishna consciousness, we're discussing Advaya Gyan Tattva. This is a subject matter about the one. There's a oneness in everything, because it all comes from the same source. And it's all one, except that it has variety within the oneness. And variety is the mother of enjoyment. Therefore, the one, who is the supreme enjoyer, expands himself for his own pleasure. And he makes unlimited variety for himself, especially in the form of asankhya jivas, unlimited living entities he can relate to. He has an individual and unique relationship with every single living entity. Sanitya nitya sambandha prakritischa paraivasa. Each one has an eternal kinship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Only some of them have forgotten and are embroiled in the material world. So, the material world is a facility given by Lord Balarāma. In fact, Lord Balarāma is the facilitator of everyone in the spiritual world and in the material world. So how does that take place? In the topmost planet, Goloka Vrindavan, Lord Balarāma expands himself into all kinds of paraphernalia to take care of the needs of Krishna. So Krishna lies down in a bed. So Balarāma manifests himself as the bed. He also, of course, not so much in Vrindavan. Krishna doesn't wear shoes. That's why there's so many footprints. But in Dwarka and other places, there's shoes. Sometimes he wears shoes. But in Vrindavan. But there's paraphernalia like Brahman thread. This is a facility for Krishna. Any facility you can think of is manifested by Balarāma in the spiritual world. And then Balarāma, as the first expansion of Krishna, then expands himself into the Chaturvyuha. And from the Chaturvyuha, he, Sankarshan, Vasudeva, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, 4 transcendental personalities. He also expands himself into Mahasankarshan. And from Mahasankarshan comes the Mahavishnu. Then comes the Garbhadakshayi Vishnu and Kshirodakshayi Vishnu. Each one of them has a function. The Mahavishnu is the one who glances over the material energy, and we know this that from studying Advaita Acharya. He's the manifestation of Mahavishnu. And from chanting the Brahma Samhita, we know that Mahavishnu glances at the material nature. And from his glance, the living entities, the jivas, manifest or are impregnated into the material nature. And then, as Garbhadakshayi Vishnu, he lies down in the water that comes from the perspiration from his own pores and fills up half of the universe. And from his navel comes a lotus stem, and atop the lotus, Brahma, the engineer of the universe, is born. And then he expands again into Kshirodakshayi Vishnu. And Kshirodakshayi Vishnu Yachchaksharesha savita sakala grahanam yachshaktirasti jagadanda chayayadanta andantarasta paramanu chayandharastam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Expands himself into every atom and into the heart of every living entity. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Ishvara sarvabhutanam hrida sharajanatishthiti brahmayan sarvabhutani yantra rudrani mayaya. I'm there within the heart of every living being. And Balarāma is that original source of all facility called the Sandhini potency. And so when Krishna comes to the material world in order to perform his pastimes, Balarāma also comes with him. In fact, he comes a little before him. There's a debate about this in Vrindavan because from the one of the Puranas, there's some indication that Balarāma's a year older than Krishna. But actually, if he was a year older, then how would they be wrestling together and playing together in their early childhood? We hear from Srimad Bhagavatam how Balarāma comes as the 7th pregnancy of Devaki, but then transfers himself to the womb of Rohini. And then he's known as the son of Rohini. And then when Krishna is born, both Krishna and Balarāma are there for the name-giving ceremony. That's other evidence. You don't wait a year until you give the name, giving the name to the child. So they're both there with Gargamuni in the cowshed during the time that Gargamuni is giving the names for these children. And so they grow up together and perform their pastimes in their early childhood, much to the pleasure especially of Yashoda and Rohini, who watch their children with great trepidation because there are all kinds of perils in the environment. There could be snakes and animals with horns and so forth, but the kids play with abandon, grabbing onto the tails of the calves and having them drag them through the mud and cow dung. And they come back, and the mothers and all the other residents of Vrindavan, including all the males and females in the gopas and gopis in the village, enjoy seeing Krishna and Balarāma growing up. They're so beautiful. And especially in that environment when they're smeared with mud and playing with each other, wrestling, fighting, harassing people, and so forth. Their beauty is enhanced. And as they grow up together, they're given various duties to do. One of them is to first tend to the calves, because the small children can handle the little calves. But when Krishna and Balarāma get a little bit older, then they're given the task of taking out the cows. That happens on a day that's celebrated every year on Gopashtami. That's also a time when the residents of Vrindavan note that they can start to see all the markings on the lotus feet of Krishna because he's a little heavier now, not just a little child. Before it was very faint to see in his tiny little footprints what the markings were, but now they're clearer. And of course those footprints are always preserved. We know from the pastime of the Kaliya serpent that Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has informed us that although there are millions of cows and other animals coming and going, what speak of people, on the soft dust of Vrindavan, Krishna's footprints are always visible. So he said, how is that possible with so many others walking around? And he explains how all of the residents of Vrindavan, all the animals and all the people are careful never to step on Krishna's footprints. And therefore, even though there are millions of cows walking by, they go around Krishna's footprints, and they're always there visible in Vrindavan. Akrura noted this when he came to Vrindavan. He saw those footprints in the dust of Vrindavan, and he rolled in them. This is the way Prabhupada says that one should enter into Vrindavan, is to roll in the dust without any consideration. Is this okay? Is it going to ruin my dhoti or my sari? One should be absorbed in that mood of letting go and taking shelter of Krishna in the dust of Vrindavan. So as Krishna and Balarāma go out to take care of the cows when they're a little bit older. Of course, we know those who are parents, when the children first go off to school, there's a little bit of tension. Did you fill out that card? Did you bring your lunch? Are you going to come back on time? Like, Mom. Either that if you multiply that times 1,000, you get how it was with Krishna and Balarāma going off for their first time into the Vraj to tend the cows, and Yashoda, Rahini coming after them. You sure you have your lunch? You're going to eat it all, right? This is described in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita 7 times, 8 times. She asks him, make sure all his clothes are neat, and he's going off. You're going to come back on time, right? And of course, during the daytime, when Krishna and Balarāma go off into the forest with their friends, and they feel complete freedom, because now they can just hang out with their friends and play around, and that's what they do. Krishna will see peacocks, and the peacocks make a sound. Anyone? Does anyone know that? Needs a little work. Come on, Kanka, you're from New Vrindavan. You should. See, that's pretty good. Should practice. That's what they do, the kids. They imitate the birds, and Krishna will dance. If he sees a particular kind of bird dancing, like peacock, then Krishna will dance even more gracefully than the peacock. And the boys will laugh, and the peacocks become enlivened, and they dance even more vibrantly. And they also see monkeys, and they'll watch the monkeys swinging trees, and the boys will swing from the trees. And then sometimes the boys steal one another's lunches, and the boy will be chasing after it, and then about to grab it back, and then it's thrown to the next boy. It's a game. It's a game called Keep Away. And when the boy's just about to cry, they give it back. It's like, all right. And then they play who can touch Krishna first, because they're feeling complete satisfaction because they're with Krishna all day long. They can just play with him all day. And when Krishna goes behind a tree and they don't see him for a millisecond, then there's a sense of anxiety. What to speak of this material world when nobody can see him? Why do you think people need so many medications? Because you can't see Krishna. And then they have to settle for looking at some other form. Here's a movie star or some other object that everyone looks at. But there's no satisfaction there. So every day when they play in the Vraj, there's a time when they have to stop their playing, and therefore Yogamaya arranges for an event to take place that will punctuate their playing. And for instance, we know about Aghasura being on the path. that day, Balarāma wasn't there. Krishna arranges all of his pastimes to suit everyone. And he knew on that day that he would be stealing away, Brahma would be stealing away the calves and the cowherd boys. And he knew that Brahma, how's he going to steal Balarāma, one of the boys? Plus, if Balarāma came to know that some of his closest friends, like Subala, had been stolen away, he would have been in such great anxiety. So Krishna covers even Balarāma during this pastime of just after Aghasura and going down for a picnic, which is what breaks the play is the killing of Aghasura, and then they go sit down and they have their picnic. And now Brahma steals away the calves and cowherd boys. Balarāma's not there. And Balarāma doesn't know, even for a year, that Krishna has done this switch. And the reason that he doesn't, and this is revealed in the Bhagavatam, that one day, after about a year, when there had already been many interesting occurrences in Vrindavan, and that was that the parents of the children had shown 10 times more affection for their children than ever before. How would you feel if you all came home and your parents gave you 10 times more affection than they do now? What would that look like? Do you have any idea? Well, that's what happened in Vrindavan. It was demonstrative. And the reason was because Krishna was now the boys. They looked exactly the same. Every detail was the same, every characteristic, but they were expansions of Krishna. And Krishna was actually fulfilling the desires of the residents of Vrindavan. They were always praying, please let me be with Krishna. And so he made himself available during that time. Balarāma was noticing these things, but didn't think much of it until one day when the cows were on top of the hill and the young calves were on the bottom with the boys, cowherd boys. And the boys had brought the herd in front of the older cows who had already, the calves had already been weaned off their cows, the older cows. But this time, the cows, seeing the calves at the bottom of the hill, came running down. And 2 feet at a time. That means really fast down the hill. And when they came down the hill, they looked like they wanted to, practically out of affection, devour these young calves. They were licking their bodies so affectionately, which is extremely uncharacteristic. They had already been weaned off their mothers and the mothers from them. And so Balarāma noticed this, and he thought, that's another oddity. And he thought about it, and then began to wonder who's causing all these strange events. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that 25% of Yogamaya was lifted. So he could understand just a little bit that things were going on. First, he didn't notice it all for a whole year, and then he started noticing that these are strange occurrences. So this is interesting because Krishna's Yogamaya covers even those in the spiritual world, and including Balarāma. What about in the material world? In the material world, Mahamaya, the external energy, covers the conditioned soul. So all kinds of oddities are occurring in this world, like people are born, and then they grow up, and they start getting old. That's strange. Why do they do that? And then all of a sudden they just drop dead. And everyone goes like, well, that's no big deal. I mean, they think it's a big deal, but they don't really think, like, why do we have to do this? Everyone just accepts it, like, yeah, you got to take the good with the bad. But it's really strange. But nobody investigates it. And this is the power of the bewildering potency of Krishna, that it takes away even the impetus to investigate what's going on. So in the material world, when living entity's covered, he or she doesn't ask, oh, why do I have to die? I just live my life and I'll forget about it. And then when it comes, and it's no big deal, but it is a big deal. But nobody asks. And in the spiritual world, when one's covered by Yoga Maya, like Balarāma was at that time, he'd made no inquiry. But then when 25% of the Yoga Maya was removed, he started to think something strange going on. 50% was removed. Then he thought, there must be some kind of Rakshasi magic happening here. And then 75% was removed. And he thought, no, it can't be some Rakshasi, because how could that bewilder me or take hold here in Vrindavan with Krishna? And then 100% was removed, and he realized, Krishna, you're doing this. In other words, Krishna revealed it to him. So in reading this section, I was thinking about how we're really helpless, actually. I'm covered by illusion. Daiva hi esha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mameva ye prapadyante maya metam tarantite. And unless I surrender, and Krishna removes 25%, 50%, 75%, 100%, I can't understand anything. In fact, in 100% Maya, I just think, why should I bother? With spiritual life. I might even make up some atheistic philosophy. There is no God. And death means nothing. It's just the disassembling of matter and atoms and so forth. That's 100% Maya. And so, Muyanti Yatsureyaha. Krishna bewilders even the suras, even the demigods. Everyone's bewildered by Krishna. So, we find in this pastime how, although Balarāma's the older brother, he's expansion of Krishna, still, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in their play in the forest, we'll just talk about a few pastimes with Balarāma and what they mean. Is everyone okay? Okay. So one day, the cowherd boys and Krishna are walking in the forest. And it's very beautiful there. There are millions of different kinds of birds and flowers and trees and animals. And Krishna begins to glorify Balarāma and talk about his qualities. But actually, because one is not supposed to talk about oneself, he's glorifying himself. But he does it by glorifying Balarāma. And as they're walking through the forest, he talks to Balarāma about, in front of all his friends, about how everyone in the forest is offering their respects to him, and how he is the cynosure of all eyes. And as they're walking, they pick up a scent, a beautiful scent from the tall forest. Tall means T-A-L, the tall fruit, which is a tasty fruit. In fact, if you make some preparation out of it, it can taste like mango pudding. Sorry to torture you on a fast day, but it's a nice type of fruit, the tall fruit. And the boys, thinking about Krishna and wanting to see his vira rasa, which goes with the friendly rasa, the being boys, playing with Krishna, it augments their love for him as friends when they see him do wonderful things like killing demons. So they like to incite these things. And there's news in Vrindavan about these asses that live in the tall forest, and they won't let anybody else come there. Now, all these fruits are ripe, and they're even falling from the trees, but nobody can come and take them. And so the boys tell Krishna and Balarāma, we'd like to go there and offer you these fruits. And please make them available to all of us. So on their way, they are singing Krishna's glories, and they arrive at the tall forest. And there, Balarāma walks in as the great hero, because everyone's afraid of Dhenuka. Dhenukasura is a fearsome ass demon who threatens everybody. He's very strong, and he's kept everybody at bay from this beautiful forest. But Balarāma walks in nonchalantly, grabs one of the trees and shakes it, and then boom, 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 boom. The tall fruits fall from the tops of the trees and they hit the ground and making these noises. So Dhenukasura comes running out, sees Balarāma, and out of rage, he kicks him. And then wheels around to kick him again, but then Balarāma grabs him by the hind legs and swings him around and around. That's the time that Dhenuka dies by, what is it called? Centruk? You can't hear anything in this room with masks and then the ambient noise. Centrifugal, that's what it is. Centrifugal force kills Dhenukasura, but then he whips him into the tree, and by the force of Dhenuka hitting the trees begin to topple. And then the other asses come running out, and they attack. And now Krishna and Balarāma both kill the asses one after another and throw them in the top of the trees. There's blood coming from them, which is red, and they're decorating the sky like a panorama in the trees. And the Shukadeva Goswami describes how it's a very beautiful scene. White puffy clouds, a blue sky, red blood, and all the ass demons hanging from trees. And now the tall fruits are liberated and they're available to anyone. But the coward boys won't touch them because they're already contaminated. Because as they were killing the ass demons, they passed stool and urine and there was blood everywhere. Some of the Aborigines came, took the fruits, but Krishna and Balarāma and the coward boys just walked away and went back to Vrindavan, satisfied by seeing the carnage created by Balarāma, who instigated, and Krishna, who assisted in this case. So, donkeys can't climb trees. They can't pick the fruits, nor could they really enjoy them. But they didn't want anybody else to have them. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, as I mentioned this morning, each one of the demons in Vrindavan represents an anartha that one may carry within one's heart. And he describes in the Chaitanya Shikshamrita how this tendency to become envious of others, covet resources, and then when seeing others making advancement in life and becoming envious, why should they make advancement? This mentality is pervasive in the material world. People carry this kind of envy within their heart. And Dhenuka, the ass, also is the coarseness of life. Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita about 4 kinds of demoniac mentality. And one of them is the person who is like an ass, whose content simply with working hard all day long. And the ass, when the ass-like person who works very hard and gets lots and lots of resources in the material world, then looks at it and thinks, I don't have enough, and feels dissatisfied always. So the hard work of the material world and not questioning why I'm working so hard, like the donkey or the ass who, I hope to, probably donkeys are pretty, actually I've heard recently they're pretty nice in a lot of ways. So no offense to the donkey race, because we might have some donkeys pretty soon. They protect cows, actually. Did you know that? If you put donkeys into your herd, that they're very friendly and they come around. I'm ruining the story now. The donkeys come and they bond with the cows, and they'll say they're part of our herd. They're very protective, and lions and the kind we have around here, like mountain lions and wolves. They're aware of the fact that they have to have speed and agility to do their killing. And they're also aware, somehow or other, that donkeys kick hard. And that if they break a limb, or even a nail for that point, or a jaw, that they're finished. Their business is over. So when they see donkey, you see this in nature a lot. Just like in Vrindavan, there's the langur monkeys, and there's what's the other one's called? The rhesus. The rhesus monkeys are like little motorcycle gangs. They have little jackets with the emblem on the back. Like, you want a piece of me? And they train each other up in prison how to jump down and grab people's glasses and bead bags and stuff like that. And then they take them and they chew on them and they look at you like, yeah, come on. What are you going to do about it, punk? And they're wild. They're always fighting. When we walk around Govardhan, sometimes there's no way around. You just have to go straight through, and there's tens of thousands of them congregating. And we walk right through, and you can hear them on all sides. Big fights going on, territorial fights. But when you bring the langur monkeys out, and that's what they do around certain guest houses, they have one langur monkey. And the langur monkey will just be there, and the rhesus monkeys look over the wall and they go, we're not going in there. The langurs are very tall, really long tails, and they're mortal enemies. But the langurs always win. So the rhesus are afraid of them, and they don't come. So, back to the donkeys. Yeah. The donkeys, the ass is described as the one who doesn't think about what the purpose of life is and just works hard. And there are a few points that I think that are that we can relate to with Dhenuka. One of them, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, is the envy of other people when they see others. Like when Krishna Balarāma came into the tall forest, they began crying out. And you know what sound they make? Raja, you know? Sound a donkey makes? Can anybody do a donkey? Who did it? Come on, you got to be a little bold. Kanka, way to go. And this is the sound of the coarse materialists in the material world. That people all over the world, they have these boundaries on their country, and they don't want anybody else to come in, just like Dhenukasuras, the czar forest. They can't do anything about the tall fruits, really, but they don't want anybody else to come in and take them. And this is the kind of envy that's pervasive in the heart, in the material world. So the killing of Dhenukasura is like the killing of this spirit, the selfish spirit. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that there's a way to overcome this by the mercy of Lord Balarāma. And I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But before I do, I'll take a few reflections, and then I'm going to tell one more story about Balarāma that's very important, because it goes to the ways in which we can become purified of anarthas. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. So Maharaj, you were mentioning that Lord Balaram appeared 1 year before Lord Krishna?
No. Just about a week. Yeah.
So they are a week apart. So it means like because it's that concept is it seems like because they were named on the same day, so in that way they can be 1 week apart. But the confusion is like Krishna and Balaram are coming from the same mother Devaki, so 7th and 8th child, so there is gap of 7 days. So if you can explain a little bit of that part.
Well, he was attracted from the womb of Devaki into the womb of Rohini, and then the 8th pregnancy was Krishna, and I can't explain that except for that this discrepancy is discussed over and over again. We can do a little more research about what our Vaishnavacharyas say about that particular gap, but that's the general consensus. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. You just mentioned about the Dhenukasur and the lessons we need to learn. So Maharaj, I had a question. In today's world, people all around us are working really hard, and even in devotee circles, we see most of the times both husband and wife are working, especially when in Silicon Valley, with excellent salaries. People whom you consider, at least I'm considering inspiration, grihasthas, they also work. I mean, we don't know the numbers, but considering the general IT salary and standard of Bay Area, and apparently doing very well also in spiritual life. So it just appears that is the norm or standard, that everyone has to work very hard, because even elevated devotee grihasthas are also in the same category. So where do we draw the line? Or I mean, it's individual, I understand. Everyone has to think for their own self. But then we look up to senior devotees, and then we see that husband and wife are also working equally hard. So what do we do in today's world?
It really depends on the motive. And the world is set up in such a way, of course, since time immemorial, as described, ba, ma, describes the material world, how work is necessary. And then how much work till foam comes from your mouth. Ba. And then there's defeat at some point. And then there's fear, and ma, there's mrityu, death. However, if one is a devotee, then this trend is reversed. It becomes apavarga. And that means that all of these points are nullified because the motive is different. So when devotees come to Silicon Valley, they choose to do that because they want to be part of the Sankirtan movement here. And therefore they take up different kinds of employment to make that possible. So they can live in a place and go on doing their service. It's a strategic outlet here at Iskana Silicon Valley. We have to hold the ground and make a stand here, a really strong stand, and build up our fortress in amazing ways to defeat Maya in the world, on the world stage. The huge battles going on with Maya. So part of the war is that those brave warriors who come here take up different kinds of employment so that they can stay in the game. It's not their fault that it's an artificially inflated market. You have to buy a house where the property tax is way more than anybody should pay even for a regular house. It's not your fault. There's a runaway greed that's taken place and mismanagement in the way that the society is organized nowadays, and it's a cruel world. But the brave warriors, like yourself and your family, have stayed here deliberately so that you could fight the war right from this place. You could have decamped, and there are other places you can go, which is okay also. I'm not questioning the motive, anybody doesn't, but the ones who are here, their motive is to be in the thick of it. And that goes for, anybody who decides to stay in a place where it's a little bit difficult. I mean, we were just hearing about the Bombay project. Giriraj Maharaj, Prabhupada was commenting how, look, he stayed the whole time in rat-infested, mosquito-infested, swamp-like conditions. He could have gone anywhere, but he stayed here and served as spiritual master. So that's what the Vaishnavas are doing here, is they're serving. And it's just it's a prerequisite that you have to work hard in order to have a place here. But there's no motive that, I just want to stay here and get wealthy, because the devotees understand that wealth is flickering, and there's only so much wealth you can accumulate. After a while, it just becomes a huge burden to try to hang on to it. And once you get it, then you got to figure out how to invest it all. And then sooner or later, something's going to go wrong. So that's the situation for those who are working hard to maintain a household, but whose main purpose, their motivation is to do service. That's why they do it. I mean, we could go live in a forest somewhere near Kula and me. It's keeping up a place right there in Burlingame. The only reason we're there is because we want to be with you, and because the airport's nearby. That's why we moved there in the first place. I mean, we only came up here to really so I could be in that airport every day, which I did for 13 years. It's 7 minutes door to door, Shri Upanishad and Upadeshamrita, and I'm at my spot. And we could stay there, and we had to figure it out, how to live there, because we're not big earners or anything like that, but somehow or other Krishna made the arrangement, and we stuck in there. But we think strategically, like we're there in that place for a reason. That's why we're sitting there. That's what you're all thinking too. That's why you come here and stay here and stick in this place. Right, Sundar? Confirmed. Kanka.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for talking about Lord Balarāma. When Sarup and I got married, there was a letter from Srila Prabhupada that said, "Follow in the footsteps of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur." And if we look at Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's life, he was so amazing because he worked so hard every day, but his consciousness was completely absorbed in spreading Krishna consciousness and developing Krishna consciousness throughout the world. So that's, even though we're here, some people are working so hard in Silicon Valley, it's a matter of consciousness to do this for Krishna.
Thank you. Good example, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I read a letter recently Prabhupada wrote to Hansaduta Prabhu, where he said, just do book distribution, and you can live off of that. He said, no need to work very hard. You could just do book distribution, and then whatever profits you make from that, you can live from that. I'm just bringing that out to say there are many different instructions. The way I like to tie them all together, Prabhupada once wrote, and he writes this in a purport in the Bhagavatam. He says, for livelihood, one must be inventive. Because, you got to match up what you have, what your capabilities are, where you want to serve, and try to be inventive to find a way to make it work. There's no stereotype. It's motive that counts. And if the motive's right, if you're thinking, how can I do more service, then it makes sense. And if it's just isolated that I just want to go off somewhere and make a bunch of money, it's insanity. That's what everybody's doing all over the world, and it doesn't make any difference whatsoever how much money they have, because they can't be happy. Yes.
Prabhuji, I was just having a conversation recently with a couple of devotee friends, and since all of us work, we were just talking, and as Mayapur Bihari Prabhu was mentioning, I was just thinking that I think as far as devotees are concerned, they probably work just to get paid. And this is what I heard from other friends. They were mentioning that even though they can grow ahead, like you can become the director or maybe whatever, CEO, whatever levels, or maybe in education department, you can become superintendent of schools and director, but they don't want to grow that way. They are happy with what they are. They have enough money that they get, which is needed, because as you get more ahead, there is a lot more responsibility and a lot more time to put in. So, this was my understanding, that most of them were, when we were discussing this, they said that, that's not the route we want to take. We're just happy with what we have, and because we have the extra time for now. Yeah.
Thank you. I was sorry to break the. I just thought of a verse I wanted to cite in relationship with what you just said. This is the verse that Prabhupada would pull out and quote in the context of this conversation. This is from the 5th canto, 5th chapter, Lord Rishabhadeva's teachings, text number 3. Eva mayishe kritasauridhartha janeshu deham haravartikeshu griheshu jayat majarati matsu napriti yukta yavarartascha loke. Those who are interested in reviving Krishna consciousness and increasing their love of Godhead do not like to do anything that is not related to Krishna. They are not interested in mingling with people who are busy maintaining their bodies, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. They are not attached to their homes, although they may be householders, nor are they attached to wives, children, friends, or wealth. At the same time, they are not indifferent to the execution of their duties. Such people are interested in collecting only enough money to keep the body and soul together. Prabhupada, whether he is an impersonalist or a devotee, one who is actually interested in advancing spiritually, should not mingle with those who are simply interested in maintaining the body by means of so-called advancement of civilization. Those who are interested in spiritual life should not be attached to homely comforts in the company of a wife, children, friends, and so forth. Even if one is a grahasta and has to earn his livelihood, he should be satisfied by collecting only enough money to maintain body and soul together. One should not have more than that, nor less than that. As indicated herein, a householder should endeavor to earn money for the execution of bhakti yoga, shravanam, kirtanam, vishnu smaranam, pada sevanam, archanam, bandhanam, dasyam, sakyam, atma nivedanam. A householder should lead such a life that he gets full opportunity to hear and chant. He should worship the deity at home, observe festivals, invite friends in, and give them prasad. Haribol. A householder should earn money for this purpose, not for sense gratification. Case closed. Pralambasura. Pralamba snuck in. He disguised himself as one of the cowherd boys, put on a little turban, tucked his dhoti in the way the other cowherd boys were wearing theirs, and came into the assembly of cowherd boys, Krishna Balarāma. Krishna greeted him, and he called him Bhadram, Bhadra, which has various meanings, and one of them is auspicious. He was being tricky. Krishna knew who he was and what his intention was coming there. But he didn't want to blow his cover to start with, so he called him Bhadra. So the cowherd boys took it that he was a friend. And this is another incident in which Balarāma also came to know after Krishna of what was going on with this character or in a particular situation. So Pralamba had the intention of killing Krishna, who was sent by Kamsa. And Krishna then matched up the boys in a game which would result in the victors riding on the shoulders of the ones who lost. And Krishna helped oversee the choosing of the teams because he wanted two things. One is he wanted it to be fair, so it was a good match. And the other was he wanted to make sure that Pralambasura had to carry Balarāma on his shoulders. And that's how he matched up the two teams in the game. And so the result of the game was that Pralambasura had to carry Balarāma on his shoulders. And they were to meet after carrying their victors at a certain location, Bandirava tree, which is a magnificent big tree. But as they all walked down there, Pralambasura kept going. And Balarāma noticed that he passed the tree. And then he started to notice that the demon was changing. And Prabhupada mentions there that in the presence of the Supreme Personality of God, demons can't exercise their mystic power. So he couldn't maintain his form as a cowherd boy. And he began changing into a large form. And he also had the intention of killing Balarāma. So Balarāma then, when he saw the expansion of the demon, and for a second was surprised by it, and then realized, oh right, I'm Balarāma. And with one stroke, he smashed his head in, which broke his head. And there was some fluid that came out that was like red manganese. And the demon died. And the story's over quite quickly that Balarāma killed Pralambasura, and then the boys went on after glorifying him for killing the Pralambasura demon. So he's an iconic demon, an iconic figure. Pralamba is the one in the descriptions Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives of these demons. He talks about Pralamba. Yes, it's a lamba. It's a kind of pralamba means overextended. Overextended means he's covering something up. He's trying to present himself in such a way to show himself as something else that he isn't. That's what he means, overextended. So this tendency to be something that we're not is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur says Pralamba represents. To have some kind of pretense and not being sincere. So the most important quality of a devotee is arjavam, or simplicity. And it's the opposite of duplicity. Or it's juxtaposed with duplicity. Simplicity means that you present who you are. You're able to admit your faults. So as devotees, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur points out in his own poetry, he shows the example in Amar Jivana of just saying all these, giving this description, this is what I'm like, admitting all these things. Of course, he's not like that, but any conditioned soul is rotten to the core, basically. And I shouldn't think, oh, I'm a liberated soul, I'm fine. But one should admit one's frailties and not be afraid of pointing out one's own shortcomings in the right context. In simplicity, the devotee doesn't try to hide oneself like Pralamba did. He came in, says Bhaktivinoda Thakur, meaning to do something else. He had a different motive in coming into the assembly of Krishna. So he says, when we come into the assembly of Vaishnavas, if we're to be freed from this anartha, then we have to be simple. And it means that, actually I heard Gaur Govinda Maharaj once say, that if you have a question in class, and then you don't raise your hand because you think, well, everyone will know then that I didn't know. He said, you're a rascal! because that's not simple. You don't know, don't be afraid, ask. And I've been thinking how I heard a phrase a while back that you never lose credit by giving credit. And similarly, you never become degraded, and your reputation never becomes degraded by admitting your faults. In fact, it's the opposite, paradoxically, because I think if I hide my shortcomings, then nobody will know. But when I reveal them, and everyone will think like, oh, okay, you're just like us. But actually, just like us means you're hiding your faults also. But an exalted person, a simple person, an honest person is able to admit, these are my faults. This is where I'm the shortcomings. So he says that you should process those in the company of advanced devotees, guya makyati prachiti. Especially, you should be able to admit before your gurus that this is where I'm falling short. And if you can do that, then you can overcome the anarthas. So it requires some work. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, with the demons that Balarāma killed, one has to apply oneself. And so in the case of this anartha of trying to hide some bad qualities or to try to pretend to be something I'm not, one has to learn how to reveal one's mind in confidence to an advanced devotee so that one can unburden oneself from that anartha. In thinking about that, I was remembering the pastime in the 11th canto of Samba, who comes to Narada and the other sages in a pretentious way and says that all the boys, the teenagers and so forth, they dressed up Samba as a woman. And then they came in and he said, oh, dear sages, including Narada was there, Is it going to be a boy or a girl? This is a very pretentious way of dealing with an assembly of Vaishnavas. It's kind of sarcastic joking. And so knowing what's going on, the sages said, Narada in fact pronounced that you'll give birth to a lump of iron that will kill your whole dynasty. And then they became just extremely afraid, and they went back to King Ugrasena, and they told him what happened. And they looked under his cloth, and there was a lump of iron there. So he said, grind it up. He ground it to powder and threw it in the ocean. And then there was one chunk left over, too small to grind, so they threw that in the water. Finished, right? No. There were implications. It went and grew into the reeds. And those became the destruction of the whole Yadu dynasty, because later on, when they had an argument, they became intoxicated. And they started fighting one another and picking up these reeds from the bank of the lake, and they were smashing each other, and it killed them. And what to speak of the little piece that was thrown into the water, was swallowed by a fish. Later on, the fish was caught. They took the piece out, and it was given to the hunter, who put it as an arrowhead that ultimately, when he was hunting in the forest, he shot it and it hit the foot of Krishna. And that was Krishna's excuse for leaving the planet. Okay, I'm gone. Leaving now. So the point is, from that one pretense, there was this inordinate result. And so I may think it's no big deal to create some falsity in my life, to hide something. But actually then it always comes out. And it comes out in the most unusual ways. You can be 200 miles away and then you're found out because you were hiding something. Somebody said, hey, aren't you such and such? What are you doing here? That happens all the time by Krishna's arrangement. So nothing goes unnoticed eventually, and it always comes out in some implication in one's life. So the devotee realizes this. This is part of being Krishna conscious, and this is killing the demon, pralamba. Don't fake, don't hide it. Face it, whatever the problem is. And that's what we notice people who are addicted to various substances, and they go into like a 12-step program. And one of the characteristics is they just admit the problem. That's why they get better, some of them. Yes?
Thank you, Srila Gurudev, for narrating this story and relating this with anarthas also. This both anarthas, I see I have so many anarthas, but these both anarthas of credit seeking and duplicity I see in myself most. And I mean, sometimes, like somehow, just my mind tricks. It just works in a way like, okay, credit in a credit-seeking way that, okay, it even if I don't realize, still it works in that way that, okay, this way I will get the credit and all. And, sometimes my mind tricks me, okay, if we share, we can inspire, but just internal thing is to get the credit. And, sometimes it tricks like, okay, to please the pure devotee, share the results, and, and duplicity also, or, sharing more than what has happened. So how to, and thank you for encouraging also to share it, but how to overcome both of these anarthas?
We're always self-interested. That's important, part of the equation. It's just that I've got the wrong self in mind. So Krishna is Atmanam Akilatmanam. You know what that means? Atmanam Akilatmanam. It means Krishna is the soul of our soul. He's the self of our self. I'm so interested in my Atma, but right now in conditioned life, I think my Atma is my hair. I notice on Zoom, everyone gets on and thinks it's a mirror. I'm like, we're watching you, you know. So I try to turn off the self-view. I'm tired of seeing myself in there, and they're like, hey, hi, you know, like, stop it, you know, that's not you. But everyone's got that vision here in the world. They think, oh, that's me. That's myself. So Atma means body, mind, and spirit. You're not your body. You're also not your mind. There's these different features that Krishna brought out this beautiful verse at Kurukshetra to show everybody that this is the main affliction in the world. Yasyama buddhi kunapetru dhatuke swadi kalatradishu bhoma ijiti. Yatirtha buddhi salilena karichit janishu abigeshu eva gokara. So you've got these different features of misidentifying oneself as the body. So the first one is to think that this body, this physical body, is me. And the second one is to worship one's homeland. And then the next one is to go to a holy place and just think it's for taking a bath and not to meet meet sacred people there. So there's a verse from Prahlad Maharaj in his prayers to Lord Nrsingadev. Naivatmana prabhuridam nijalabhapurno manam jananti vidusa karano vranite yajjano bhagavati pratilabhya kamo hrid rogam ashpaparino. I missed the last line. He says, pratilabhya, a reflection. We're a reflection of Krishna. So when you decorate your face in the mirror, then you see that when you decorate your face, then you see the reflection in the mirror is decorated. And so the point he makes is, don't worry about taking care of yourself so much, just take care of Krishna. Because he's the source of yourself. He's your real self. And when you do that, then you're automatically decorated. So the way to overcome this puja labha and pratishta, it's misplaced. Just give it to Krishna. And you'll see advanced devotees doing this, that they hand everything to their guru. And then, Guruji, you take it. And the guru's like, yep, pass it to the next person. Nobody who's a guru thinks I'm a guru, otherwise you're not a guru. Everyone thinks I'm a messenger, I'm passing it up. And so we have to be instruments. We never take anything. We have to give it to Krishna. And then you realize, however, from this verse, when you give it to Krishna, that's when you actually get fed, not before. You can't take it individually and say, you're like, here I am. It's like, everyone's like, who cares? I'm here too. I got here before you. There's a lot more other people that look much better than you too. But if you just give it to Krishna, then you find this uncanny way in which you get all the credit. Krishna gives it to you in the correct way. And there's this awareness that Krishna's taking care of it. He knows how to give credit to everybody properly, just as the stomach, when it gets food, it knows where the glucose goes, right to the brain. It knows where all the other different trace elements are meant to go. I don't know. So if you get in this mood of whatever puja, worship, labha, gain, pratishta, kind of fame that I want to have, and you just transfer it to Krishna. So you can handle it. And that's what Krishna says in the Gita. Bhoktaram yagada. I can handle this. You can't. Don't try to touch it. It'll blow up in your face. And that's reality. It's real. And if you get into that mode, you'll find that you're completely nourished. You don't lack anything at all. You feel completely full because everything gets apportioned just the way it should. Yes. There's one right behind you.
What about?
You wanted to follow up?
Yeah. So and
Okay.
Thank
Go
you so
ahead.
much. Thank you so much for this. What about duplicity? How to overcome that one?
Well, that's the heart of duplicity, of trying to keep something that doesn't belong to me. And duplicity means two. Duplicity means bhayam dvitiya abhinibeshitasya. It means all fear comes from thinking I'm separate from Krishna. So I got to take care of myself. And if I'm thinking, if I take care of Krishna, then I don't have to do anything else, then there's no more duplicity. And it takes practice also. We have to practice in a safe environment because kuyamakiti prichini means find somebody who's advanced enough to help you process things. That's the key to success in devotional service. You have to have good association. You have to find those whom you can be with and discuss the shortcomings you might have in such a way that they'll help unburden you. And they won't judge you because they're already on at least a madhyama platform where they can hear all these things and then not envy you. And the part of envy is like you hear somebody who's got some problem and then you think, okay, let me dominate them now. This is the material mindset. And actually, it was Narada who told Dhruva, this is how to overcome all the problems in your life and know how to relate to people properly. So if you find somebody that's less than you and needs help, then give them mercy. Don't dominate them. Don't try to control them now because you've got something on them or, like, I'm better than you. You give them mercy. And if you find somebody superior to you, admit it and serve them. That's how you make advancement. And if you find somebody on the same level as you, then make friends. So relationships, Rupa Goswami puts at the very beginning of his list, when he says, Dadati Pratigranati, Bhunkte Bhojete Chaiva. Because if we don't have those loving exchanges, it's very difficult to unburden ourselves. We have to have a safe place to go where we can say, like, am I okay? And look at, this is how I'm feeling, and process it on a regular basis. Maybe even every day or every hour, how much ever you need. Okay? Okay, 1, 2. Prabhu already midway through. Yes?
4834.
4834 is being entered into evidence. For 834. Keep going. Every man should act like this. When he meets a person more qualified than himself, he should be very pleased. When he meets somebody less qualified than himself, he should be compassionate toward him. And when he meets someone equal to himself, he should make friendship with him. In this way, one is never affected by the threefold miseries of this material world. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the nice class. My question is about, you were mentioning when Balarāma met Dhenukasura, then after that, what happened after Akasura was killed, then Brahma Bhiman Lila happened. So Krishna...
Agasura.
Yeah. So Krishna actually kind of took away the Yogamaya, power upon Balaram, like in percentage, as you mentioned, 175, then 50, then 25. So I was probably wondering in a similar perspective, like when we take shelter of a bona fide guru and take up devotional service and start practicing it, like how does Krishna removes this effect of Mahamaya? Like, is it like a percentage way, as you mentioned, or like it depends upon the
Ye
person who
yata
is
mam
practicing?
prapadyante tam sataiva bhajamyaham. Mama vartmana vartante manusya partha sarvasha. This is the rule. As you surrender to me, I reward you accordingly. So if you hold something back from Krishna and think like, okay, he won't notice that I'm not surrendering this, then, but if somebody fully surrenders to Krishna, then Krishna reveals everything about himself. It's very disarming that somebody says, okay, I'm going to take your instruction. Sarva dharman. What? Sarva dharman? Sarva. How much? Everything. Just surrender everything. And if somebody takes that to heart and says, yes, I'm gonna enact that in my life, then Krishna reciprocates accordingly. And we see from the Bhagavatam with those who are utterly surrendered, then Krishna himself says it's such an exalted thing to do, to use your free will, to surrender to me, that practically you'll be satisfied with your own exalted position. Because Krishna admits he couldn't reciprocate with the gopis because they gave so much surrender to him. So that's the best idea anybody's ever come up with in their lives. If it was for a fleeting moment, it's a good idea. Embrace it and organize your life around that principle. Surrender to Krishna and plan out. If you're going to make a plan, make a strategic plan. How can I surrender everything to Krishna? That's where ultimately Varnashrama is. It's this idea, it's like, okay, you got different sections of your life. Plan it out so you can ultimately just surrender to God.
So Prabhu, the thing is, the more we surrender, you're saying the more the potency of Maya will be lifted from us. Yes.
You surrender 25%. 25% will be uncovered.
Okay, Prabhu.
33%. 33%. You'll be able to see. Okay, Shamalangi and then Srivas Prabhu.
So we were talking that, in the material world, how we have a desire for fame, even if not externally, internally we have that. So, and also you said that devotees, they give it to Krishna. So I was remembering the pastime of Madhavendra Puri after the Remuna, when he, the Lord, like Krishna came as Khirchora Gopinath and take. So he didn't want to become famous because everybody would know and, follow him. So next day he leaves, he goes away to Puri. But I think the author writes that, but reputation will follow such devotees. Even if he tried to move away from it, everybody somehow knew him and everybody glorified him as a great devotee. And also, I think in the question where my Mahaprabhu asks Ramananda Roy, who are the most glorious? So Ramananda Roy says that the devotees of the Lord are the most glorious. So reputation, if you're a pure devotee, it will always come, follow you. So I just wanted to mention that.
This is the refinement of consciousness that one notices that puja, labha, and pratishta are disturbing my relationship, my bhajan, my relationship with Krishna and my ability to worship him. And therefore, as Raghunath Das Goswami writes about how this idea of fame is like the urine of a donkey. Who wants that? And that this is how odious it is. And so devotees are become sensitive. In fact, Vyasadeva writes how devotees become so sensitive, refined in their consciousness that they're as sensitive as an eyeball. The eye is so sensitive that if a tiny little particle of dust gets in there, you're like, what happened? And so if devotee accidentally, entertains for a moment some idea, like, oh, maybe that'll make me better. And then, oh, God, that was horrible. Get it off me. Let me clean my eye and let me clean my heart of that idea. So devotees protect themselves from puja, labha, and pratishta. But it seems like a contradiction, as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur mentions, that sometimes you have to take that. So he says when the village girl learns dancing and then the recital time comes and she comes up on the stage and then she goes in the corner and covers her head. And the instructor comes out and said, no, now you dance. You show everything you learned. But that's also another kind of humility, is to be able to take some, like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur at his Vyasa Puja, he said, what am I, a zoo animal? I'm sitting up here on this big seat and everyone else is sitting down there, and then I'm taking all these praises. He said, I must be a big animal in the zoo. And then he said, no. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, you must do this. You must become guru. He said, therefore, I'll take this as my service, but you don't touch it. Not one particle can you touch. It has to be passed up. That's the point. And so it's not that we become reticent in all conditions of life. We have to be able to move about and do our duties in various ways, but it's the internal processing of everything that we come in contact with, whether it be wealth building or whether you have to take a position as a leader and take some accolade at some point. All these things are offered to Krishna, and you're not thinking, this is mine, this is me. And you're like, Prabhu.
So, Krishna and Balaram, they had differences of opinion, especially, during Subhadra's pastime, or Balaram being very neutral during Kurukshetra war. So what is the deeper understanding of why there are differences in the same personality of Godhead?
This is to increase the rasa. When there's human-like activities in the Supreme, then it becomes very sweet. When there's human-like activities amongst humans, it's just like, it is what it is. But when Krishna and Balaram fight, if you know the ontology, if you understand, this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that from whom everything else emanates, and that they're having a quarrel, then it becomes fascinating. Queen Kunti and other great exalted pure devotees say, like, what are you doing? This is amazing. How it is that you come to this world and you act like you're attached and things like that. And there's a great flavor in that. So therefore, Krishna arranges these kinds of pastimes and has quibbles with Balaram. There are two different natures in his previous Leelas as Lord Ramachandra. Of course, Lakshman didn't like it very much because he had to do. He was the one who Ram said, "You take Sita for a picnic." Oh, great, we're going on a picnic. It's like, you just take her. It's like, okay, and what are you going to do? It's like, nothing, but you take her out there and just leave her. He had this maryada to maintain as a king. That was his purpose in that incarnation, to show that the duty came before even family. There was the dharma that he was following as a king. But Lakshman, when he had to carry out that order, and others very similar to that, he's like, I don't like being the younger brother. Therefore, his next, he's like, no more. So then he comes as the older brother. However, Krishna still asserts himself. We find that in the wedding of Subhadra, that Subhadra was going to be married to Duryodhana by the wish of Balaram, because Duryodhana was a student of Balarāma. Balarāma taught him club fighting, how to do martial arts. And he became very expert. He learned from the best teacher. Then you become expert. So then he had it lined up. And Krishna thought, I don't think so. Of course, Duryodhana thought it was a good idea, because then the war that was shaping up would be a lot different. And probably a lot of the Yadus wouldn't go into it. So then Krishna told Arjuna to dress up as a sannyasi. And then Krishna spread a rumor all throughout the town. He said, there's this sannyasi, and he can give Ashirvad. And a great benediction to anyone who comes, any benediction you want, he can give. So then everyone in town was talking about it. So then Krishna, Subhadra said, oh, there's this sannyasi, I should get a benediction from him, right? Krishna, yes. Go meet him, ask him for something. So Arjuna was out, and in a special place, he had his chariot hidden nearby. And when Subhadra came, she was all dressed up, wearing red garments, 40 different types of scents, and all kinds of fancy jewelry. And she came there, and she had this desire, please benedict me. I really don't like who they have me, this arranged marriage. I'm not interested. So Arjuna's like, okay. He grabbed her by the hand, put her in the chariot. They started driving, and then when they found out, they started chasing him. So he said, you drive. So Subhadra took the reins, and she's driving along. And Arjuna's fighting off the soldiers from behind. And then Balarāma became incensed. And he said that, oh, look what's happening. He's stealing. He was all arranged. And Krishna, what are you talking? Just relax. He said, didn't we do that with Rukmini? And you helped me. This is what we do. It's a bona fide wedding. Besides, now, if you defeat him, they're already married. It's a Rakshasa married. They're married now. She'll be a widow for life. You want that? So he defeated his brother, Balarāma. He acquiesced. But they have this relationship in these pastimes that if you say, okay, it's Advaya Gyan Tattva, they're the same person, and they just agree on everything. It's like reading a book. It was a very fine day. The weather was good. Nothing happened that was exceptional. Next day, it was a very fine day. It's like living in Maui. You never know what's happening because the weather's always the same. It's just same. But variety is what the beauty is. And when there's some acrimonious dealings between those we know are the absolute, and they're fighting amongst each other, we think, oh, what is this? It carries away the mind. It's so sweet and beautiful. And that's what's going on in the spiritual world. In fact, as Kaviraj Goswami mentions at the beginning of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that Krishna himself appreciates the scolding of his consorts more than the reverent hymns of the Vedas that you hear in Vaikuntha. But when it's like, Krishna's here, he's come to see us. We don't want to see him. Tell him to take a hike. And Krishna, these kinds of exchanges are the nectar of the unceremonious love that takes place with Krishna and his devotees in the spiritual world. Yes.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
If you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to ask you if maybe you can throw some light on how we as youth can sort of prioritize spiritual pursuit, right? So I might want to hike today. I might want to actually learn singing and, I might want to perform. all of those form my priorities in this materialistic world. Like you rightly pointed out, I might want to become the VP or whatever it is, right? So, but at the same time, I need to also devote certain amount of time in order to grow in my spiritual life, right? So how do I sort of prioritize between hiking with friends versus actually certain things that I want to do versus also being a part of a spiritual practice and, maintaining a good balance of both?
Oh, what a good question. So practical. Thank you very much. Well, fortunately, Krishna gives us the answer right in the Bhagavad Gita. So he says in the 9th chapter of the Gita, Yat koroshi arashnasi as johosi dadasi yat tapasyasi konteya tat kurishva madarpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer in sacrifice, whatever austerities you perform, do it as an offering to me. That includes everything. So whatever we have in our life, we have some interests, say music. So music comes from the spiritual world. And when you connect it to your devotional service, it becomes a beautiful thing, and it becomes a source of happiness for you. It's something you can offer to Krishna. And that goes for all the kinds of things that we like in life anyway, like eating, my favorite thing. And so, my favorite song, Sharira Vijajal. I just become happy and think, all right, I'm gonna survive. I'll be okay. And whatever we eat, you can offer to Krishna. Just cook it for Krishna and offer it to Krishna, and then you can eat as much as you can. And singing, that's all we do practically. Think about singing, try to make new tunes to sing for Krishna, And if you can dance for Krishna, there are all the ways that you can offer things to Krishna. And at the same time, Krishna acknowledges that we also may have a livelihood and we have to maintain some health and so forth. So in a very practical way, he says, Yukta hara viharasya, yukta cheshtasya karmasu, yukta swapnavabodhasya, yogo bhavati dukkha. He said, if you stay balanced in the rest of your life, don't eat too much, don't eat too little, don't sleep too much, don't sleep too little, don't recreate too much, don't recreate too little. Stay balanced. And why? The Bhagavatam answers, Kamasya nendriya pritir labo jiveta yavata, jivasya tattva jignasya, narto yash cheha karmabi. Purpose of life is to stay healthy so that you can do your service. My wife and I moved to the Bay Area a while back, 30 plus years ago, I think. And we were trying to find a place to stay. Then we had to ask ourselves, what are we doing here in the Bay Area? We came here so I could continue I was at the time going to airports and distributing Bhagavad Gita and other books. Ramananda might have got a Bhagavad Gita from me, in fact, walking through the airport, San Francisco airport. Haribol. That was the most auspicious book I ever distributed. And so when we moved up here, we were thinking, where can you afford a house when you don't exist? I'd been a brahmachari for 13 years. I didn't have any credit record or anything. Somehow or other, we figured out how to, Nirkula either. She worked, as a pujari and in the VBT for many years. And so we were inventive and we figured out a way. But where would we live? Close to the airport. We got the smallest house in the history of the world, I think. Well, now they have tiny houses, but people look at our house, they go, you still live in that thing? It's like, why? Because it was close to the service. And did Krishna make it all turn out okay? Yeah, because that was our motive. You can't lose when you connect everything to Krishna. So Bhagavatam just gives us this clear advice, and Bhagavad Gita, yeah, you have talents, use them. They're beautiful. Use them. But just offer it to Krishna. And then stay healthy, but why stay healthy? So that you can do more service. And if you do that, then you just have a beautiful life. And everything becomes it's perfectly placed. Yes.
Haribol, Dandavat Pranam.
Hari Hari.
So I guess I actually had two comments. One was with respect to this, and I was thinking about it because my friend Gopika is here. A while ago, I met some friends who are not particularly devotees, but I hadn't seen them because of the pandemic, and they said they wanted to see me, and they took me to this park that I had never been to. And I was like, oh, this park is very interesting. I didn't know it was here, and it has a sort of interesting location by the freeway. And then this week, my friend asked me, can we do Julan Yatra in a park? And I was thinking, which park should we pick? Because, she's coming from here, and I'm coming from there, and this devotee is coming from there, and it has to be parking and this. And then I remembered that park that I'd been to with my friends that I didn't know about. And I was thinking, oh, Krishna arranged that those friends would take me to this park I'd never seen. And then I was able to remember it. And I thought it was pretty great. Yeah, we had a good time. I was like, and there were these kids, and they came and watched us do Julan. It was awesome. But I would never have known about that park if I didn't have these other friends. So I just thought that came to mind as an example, which is that if we do spend time doing other things, if we kind of try and collect that information as like squirrel collects nuts, maybe not, and keep it, then you can then later offer it in some way. But then also I was actually listening while I was driving here, and you were talking about how Balarāma 25%, 50%, 100%. And I was thinking that actually in so many of the Braj pastimes, Balarāma is always noticing things. Like in Govardhan, he sees Govardhan Leela, he sees that Krishna is a little unsteady because he's seeing Srimati Radharani, so he puts up his plow subtly. Or in Kaliya Leela, everybody is so unhappy, but Balarāma is smiling. And that is like a very sweet interaction. It's like Krishna needs somebody there who can appreciate the joke.
Yeah.
Like nobody else will get it, and so he needs Balaram to get it. Otherwise, what's the that's part of the joy. Like if you're putting on a magic trick, part of the joy is for some people to not know what your magic trick is, but part of the joy is for your peer to see, oh wow, that's a good magic trick. I see how you did that.
Yeah.
And that was sort of reminded me of what you were saying about the disagree. There's all this rust between them because of that.
Yeah, I really like that point. Thank you very much. That was good. And yes.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. I wanted to ask a question regarding the demons in Vrindavan. It seems like they are a great source of entertainment for Krishna, Balram, and all the Gopas. So are they also present in Golok Vrindavan?
No, they're not in Goloka Vrindavan. That's why Bhoma Vrindavan, earthly Vrindavan, is one of many reasons that Bhoma Vrindavan is so unique, is that here you have real live demons, so to speak, and a more realistic setting for everything. And as I mentioned before, the more the divine enters into a setting that seems to be ordinary, the more extraordinary the circumstances are. And so that's there. However, there are rumors of demons in Goloka, as Prabhupada said. So you need some tension in order to have a good story. And so that tension is there in the Goloka, but it comes in the form of the rumors of demons being present. You could see in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita when Gopakumar goes back to Godhead, and Krishna comes forward to greet him and embraces him, and then Krishna subsequently faints in ecstasy, seeing his friend and being united with him, Sarup. He, the other residents of Goloka, then when they approach, they're quite disturbed. And some of them are thinking that, who is this person? Perhaps this person has been sent by Kamsa, by that wizard Kamsa. That and there's something happened to Krishna. Even the birds in the sky are crying out like human crying almost when they see the scene. For a moment, there's this pathos in the air, the tension, because there's this sense that and something could happen coming from Kamsa. But in earthly Vrindavan, the pastimes are going on like that over and over again in different varieties, but they're cyclical. They happen again and again and again and again, the same pastimes, sometimes with slight variety. For instance, in Kaliya's pastime, Krishna chastises him, as we know, and afterwards Kaliya becomes a devotee. His wives notice it first because they're so intimate with him, and they're really annoyed at him more than that for not being a devotee and for wrecking everything for everybody else. And then when Krishna knocks the poison out of him by dancing on all his hoods and thoroughly chastises him, and then he submits, in his heart, he starts to develop the sense of surrender to Krishna. And his wives notice it right away. They notice the change in the countenance, and therefore they become his advocates. And they're praying to Krishna, please, he's a devotee, he's our husband, please help him. So at the end, Kaliya also offers himself that I know you ride on Garuda, but if you ever want another kind of ride, you can take me. I'm fast, because he's a very powerful personality. He just used it for wrong. And so sometimes Krishna will harness him up and he'll ride him into Mathura. So the pastimes sometimes have a variety in them. That they always have some variety. Yes.
Prabhuji, just the same as you had mentioned in Brihad Bhagavatamrita. I just want to know if I understood it right. Akrura comes to take Krishna to kill Kamsa. One of the verses. And then it is mentioned, my understanding was the Kamsa was actually in Bhama Vrindavan, but Akrura goes to Goloka Vrindavan and takes Kamsa so that all of them feel that, Krishna is actually going away, them feeling, morose. Is that understanding right, Prabhu?
I'm not familiar with that, but you can show me that he goes to Goloka Vrindavan?
I mean, Akrura is present, and it's time for Kamsa to be killed. And I can check the verse and let you know.
Okay, Thank you. Yes, Prabhu. 1, 2.
Prabhu, I have Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Pranam. Thank you for the wonderful class. My question is again on the relationship of Krishna and Balaram in the Golok Vrindavan. So in this, in the worldly pastimes, Balaram appeared before Krishna, and that's why he is, he can do what he does. But then in the spiritual world, we know that Balaram is the first expansion of Krishna. So it looks like he's not the elder brother there. So is the relationship what we see in the earthly pastimes same in the spiritual world as well?
Yes. And so the mood may be different than the ontology that you see on a chart. That here's the expansion from Krishna and so forth. After all, everything and everyone is an expansion from Krishna, but there are various relationships that he has, and it's not necessarily dependent. When we say expansion anyway, it's not something that takes place at a particular time, where we say, oh, there he just expanded. They're co-eternal. And so it's just a failing of our way of explaining it. I think co-eternal is a better way of explaining it. that they're always there, like the sun rays and the sunshine. They're coexisting. They coexist. And so it's not that, okay, you were here first. There's no time in the spiritual world. And now you became manifest afterwards as an expansion. He has the mood, does Balarāma, actually. And one of the reasons that he's so complete in his service, he's known to serve in all the different rasas. So he serves in Shanta Rasa, being Krishna's bed, and all the other paraphernalia. In Dasya Rasa, he does service for Krishna in various ways. Sakya, he's his friend. You know, they grow up together. Any of you have any sibling you grew up with? And, you know, you're friends. You share different things together, different experiences, music, all kinds of things. And then Vatsalya, Balarāma, he's Krishna's protector. As Mataji just pointed out, in the pastime of Kali, a serpent, Balarāma, of course, he came in a little bit later in that pastime, but when he got there, you know, he was like, okay, everybody, nothing to see here, calm down. He like an older brother, he looks out for Krishna. There's a specific kind of Sakya Ras in which the devotees have a tinge of Vatsalya also. Because, yeah, they're friends, but they sort of have this paternal sense that we're protecting Krishna. And they as mentioned in the Nectar of Devotion, oftentimes those types of friends, they'll carry some kind of a weapon with them too. Kind of like, you know, don't mess with him. He's our little brother. That kind of mood. And then, of course, in the Madhurya, there's the sister of Radharani, but I want to get into that. So there's all-encompassing way in which Balarāma is involved in supporting Krishna's pastime. His abhiman, or his mood, is that I'm a servant of Krishna. And that's what his whole existence is about. And we are expansions of Balarāma. Of course, as mentioned in the Nectar, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sankarshana, or Balarāma, is the reservoir of all the jivas. So hello, jivas. Haribol. They're all expansions from Lord Balarāma. So what is our purpose? We're paraphernalia. So Balarāma considers himself paraphernalia for the Lord, right? Krishna needs a bed, I'll become the bed, I'll become the thread, I'll become whatever Krishna needs. So what are we for? Become big CEO? And I become the big fat cat? Yes or no? No. But if I consider myself, Jiv Krishna Das Abhishwas Korleto or Dukhanai, what is my purpose? Eko Bahu Sham. Krishna expanded himself for his own pleasure and say, like, how can I please Krishna? I'll serve him. And I'll just follow the person I expanded from, which is Balarāma, Sankarshan. And when I do that, then everything's fine, because I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I just do service for Krishna. That was a long answer to a short question. I'm not sure I answered your question. Okay, we'll take two more, and then we'll have some kirtan. 1, 2.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, thank you so much for the nice
Hare
class. My question was related to Aniruddha Nitayachan Prabhu's question. So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that to the degree we surrender to him, to that degree he rewards us. But we also hear that we take one step towards Krishna, Krishna takes 1,000 steps towards us. So how do we reconcile both these things?
So it depends on our mood of surrender. This is answered in the Bhagavad Gita in the 9th chapter, where Krishna says, Samoham sarvabhuteshu name dveshosti na priya ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya mai te teshu chapyaham. There's two parts to this verse. The first part is Paramatma and us in the material world. I want an order supplier out of God. That's why when people don't get what they want, they go like, why, God, what's the use of such a person? He doesn't give me what I want. I was like, why do I have to suffer or anything like that? You know, I should just be the enjoyer. So Paramatma was like, oh God, and not another one. And he's basically just like, you know, whatever you want, you know. He sends the payments, you know, according to what we accrue in the material world. He arranges for everything, and he stays out of sight. So out of sight, he's in our heart. But because I'm the one who filed the divorce papers, and then he's so kind. Like, person gets divorced, and then he's like, okay, I don't want to say he or she doesn't want to see me. So I'll just keep sending the payments, but I'll have it come through a third party so that she doesn't even know where it's coming from, because she really doesn't want to hear from me anymore, just wants the money. So I'll just send it third party, doesn't know where it's coming from, make it through some shell companies, and then he was like, okay, getting facility, but doesn't hear from me at all. That's my position here in this world. So samoham sarvabhuteshu. Why wouldn't somebody be samoham? After all, you look at the Vishnus on the ocean, they're like half asleep. Why? Because, I mean, who wants anything? The material world, everyone's like, la-di-da-di-da, you know, we're so great. And who's God? There is no God. And God's like, oh boy, I'll go back to sleep. So then he says the second half of the verse, ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya, but if somebody worships me, somehow they get mercy, they wake up to the idea that, look, wow, hey, wait a minute. You know, this is kind of an interesting universe. There must be some creator here. And then, like, Krishna's starting to wake up and look. And then when you get Jagannath, his eyes are like this, because in Vrindavan, everyone's like full on, 24 hours a day, no sleeping. That's the city that never sleeps. That's the prema. It's just everyone's running full on all the time, serving Krishna. How can we serve him more? And so that's when he's ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya. Now, then the reciprocation becomes inordinate. So when we practice devotional service, we mention that, okay, take one step toward Krishna, and then he takes 1,000 towards us. Because actually, that's true also. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, I'm sorry, what's the verse? Neha Pikramana Shosti Pratyavaina Vidyate Swalpamapyasya Dharmasya Trayate Mahato Bhayat. So a wise person will say that, okay, it was just one tiny little thing, but that was, okay, now you're in. And as Prabhupada explains in the preface to the Upadeshamrita, he said, once you start the process of devotional service, then even if you decide you're not into it, you'll be forcibly dragged. That's Krishna's mercy. Anugraha means mercy. Anugraha means someone forces you to follow them. Anugraha. So then there's this way that a wise person sees what the potential of devotional service is. That if you gave one drop, that's a seed, it's gonna grow. And so, like Prabhupada, he went everywhere. Shukadeva Goswami, Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha Abhira Shumva Yavana Kasaraya Yene Chapapa Yarapashra Yashraya Shudyanti Tasmai Prabha Vishnave Namah. He said, doesn't matter who it is. They get a little association with a Vaishnav, and that person is going to come to the perfectional stage. So it means that devotional service is so potent that a wise person who knows how powerful it is, they'll make seemingly outlandish statements. Like we have Devahuti, Aho bata shwap chato gariyanya jiva gre vartateya namatubhyam te pusta paste juhuvusasna arya brahmanatru nama grananti ete. How wonderful this is, devotional service. If somebody says on the tip of their tongue one time, Hare Krishna, don't make fun of the Hare Krishnas. You're gonna be one of them later. I did it when I was a kid. I was walking with my brother in Berkeley, coming from music lesson, and we saw some devotee walking down the street with Madhunga on his back. And I went, Hare Krishna. And the devotee turned around, Hare Krishna. Like, my brother looked at me like, what did you just do? So that means 1,000 steps. A person who knows the science, like Kunti is saying one little Hare Krishna. And the next thing you know, the old Jed's a millionaire. So, this is the vision. And once one matures in devotional service, then that reciprocation becomes like an ocean. That's why I say, Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindhu. He's an ocean of mercy.